There is a place that is spoken about only in whispers, a dark area that spawns the beginnings of urban legends, a place where anything can happen and usually does. During the light of day, it hides just outside of view, but when the sun goes down, spirits, creatures of the night, roam free, and things do go bump in the night. It is in every state and every country, and there is no escaping it, no matter how safe you feel behind your locked doors and latched windows. So we invite you to turn down the lights and turn up your radio while we join Dave Schrader and Tim Dennis, your hosts, on a journey into the darkness on the edge of town.
Hello and welcome. You're tuned into the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Darkness Radio. I'm Dave Schrader. That's Tim Dennis. Hello, Tim.
Hello.
We've got a lot of supernatural news we're going to catch up on from all around the world a little bit later on in the program. But first, joining us, we've got the stars of Travel Channel's hit series, Portals to Hell. They're going to join us on the program, discuss the new season, Season 2. We'll talk a little bit about Season 1. Tim, I know Katrina's been a longtime friend of ours on the show. I think she's been visiting with us since, 2007, 2008 on the program, and has made many visits with us on the program. It's great to have her back joining us. Katrina, thank you so much for being here again.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. How are you?
Doing great. You know, it's always nice catching up with you. You've got something bubbling. You've got new projects that are always going on, and you're always bringing a new twist and an element to the paranormal. And it's great that we're finally able to catch up with you and Jack Osbourne and have you both join us on the program. So I'm glad you're here with us. As I just mentioned, also joining us from television's Portals to Hell, Jack Osbourne. Hello, Jack.
Hey, Dave. How's it going?
Doing great. Hey, thanks a lot for joining us. Your first appearance on Darkness Radio. We appreciate having both of you join us for this.
Oh, wow. Oh.
Thanks
for having us.
We had a chance earlier this year to all get together at Salem Live and be a part of something tremendous and huge. I mean, that was a major scope to have all of these locations being investigated simultaneously, guest investigators joining us, and you guys got to work with our good friend Cindy Kaza through part of this investigation.
Absolutely.
And I know she's been visiting with you guys on Portals to Hell quite often and helping you guys out. What did you think of doing a bigger scale production? Was it fun to kind of have this kind of different atmosphere as opposed to being isolated and in these little locations without, the kind of connectivity that we had and this cyclical energy of all these haunted locations being investigated at once?
It was definitely fast paced. It was like hitting the ground running and it was on. I had a lot of fun doing it, and we had a really interesting investigation ourselves. But yeah, it was a great experience, and something to be a part of it is kind of monumental.
Katrina, have you ever done any of the hauntings in Salem before?
Yeah, before for events and stuff. Never for television. I don't believe that I can recall off the top of my head. But definitely, for group events, you guys have done those types of events where people come out and they can investigate with you. I've done things like that in Salem many times.
Well, it's, it was really kind of a key interesting element to me is, as we all know, the paranormal does not just work on cue, right? And that's scary when you go into a live television program and you're trying to engage the spirit realm. And here you've got this unknown quantitative of, is anything going to even happen at this point? And I'm curious, you guys have an interesting aspect on Portals where, your crew and everybody is very integral in the show as well. And do you find that it gets more active when you're all kind of in it or when you guys are more isolated and on your own?
I think it depends. There's a certain atmosphere that, you kind of feel, and I'm not really sure what causes that, if it's the amount of people, the right mix of people, if it's the length of time you spend in a location. I don't think I've cracked that code yet, but, any paranormal investigator will tell you there's just a certain energy shift that happens when you're investigating, and it just like grows on your skin. It's just this electricity that happens. And so I think it's all dependent. I've experienced it different ways with different people or different number of people depending on the location. So it's hard to say for sure,
Jack, when you're putting together a program, I was going to say, when you're putting together a program like this, is it hard to, is it hard when one of you really kind of becomes the center of the activity and the other, it's, not so much activity around them? Because I do notice that it'll seem, at least on our show and watching Portals a few times, once in a while it's like centered around Jack or centered around Katrina, or maybe even your cast elements that seem to be having this kind of buildup of activity that's taking place.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I kind of look at it from, as long as what's happening is we're able to get it on film and document and capture something, for me, it doesn't bother me who's the main focus. It's just about capturing evidence and stuff that we can kind of comb through and discuss. And sometimes we end up, landing at a place of like, that's explainable and here's why. And other times we're just like, I don't know, but as long as we're getting something, I'm happy.
Well, Katrina, you've been at this for quite a while as well. Why do you think that in some locations, one individual will be a much more key element to the investigation than any others, when really, in essence, you guys are extremely gifted in the fact that you're getting to go to locations that in some cases have never been publicly investigated or have had a chance to be investigated. But yet there's, trigger elements for what causes the paranormal. Have you started to put together any kind of idea or computation on why that happens around some individuals more than others?
Well, I mean, I think anything we talk about is speculation, right? So just speculating off of what I've seen, I mean, I'll agree with you that it does seem like certain individuals attract more activity than others. And then, we have the cutesy term in the paranormal for people that just make everything, no pun intended, but die. And those are called, coolers, that no matter where you take them, nothing will happen around them. So there does seem to be some sort of marriage between people's specific and personal energy and what will happen around them. What that is about that individual, I don't have a clue yet, but I've certainly seen it with certain people. They seem to, no matter where they go, it's like they seem to attract things. And then there's people that, sometimes they have a lot of things happen to them and sometimes they don't. But I think that's what's exciting about our field is that, there are no concrete answers just yet. So it's all, exploring. It's all trial and error.
Well, the series, again, premieres coming up here Thursday, April 30th. You're off to Iron Island. You've also got the Thomas House Hotel, Haunted Hill House, the Croak-Patterson Mansion, and Ohio State Reformatory on the docket that'll be coming out over the next few weeks. And going in, when you examine the concept of the term portals, the concept that there is possibly an element of these locations that seems an opening for the other side to come through. Jack, do you think that then that opens up elements of other aspects of paranormal, that it's not necessarily just the haunting and the lives that may have been lost or the tragedies that may have been, befallen that location, but that it becomes a weak point where other elements of the supernatural can also enter our realm?
For sure. And, and to that point, like, and Katrina and I have had numerous discussions about what we think we're encountering in the moment. As I've been doing this now for, a while, I've kind of come to the conclusion that I don't always think it's what we think it is. It might not be, Grandma Susan who, haunts the master bedroom of the old manor house. It could be a totally different interdimensional energy that we just don't understand, or it could be some, entity from, the nether regions of hell. Like, so much of this is unknown, and I think that's what is a really fantastic component about doing a paranormal show, is that our sole job is to just document, and we have the ability to set up, a dozen cameras, get all the best technology we can, and just document what we're experiencing to see if we can figure out what the hell it is. It could be cryptid, it could be interdimensional, it could be alien energy, or or a spirit of someone who passed away. I love that it's an ongoing question, and we're constantly trying to just go, what is this, and how?
Well, you say that you like to kind of re-examine and know that it may not just be Aunt Gladys that's haunting the master suite, as you said, but in those instances, a lot of people have this overwhelming fear that it's something darker, more malevolent. It's the demonic force taking on these human guises to confuse us and terrify us. How much stock, Jack, do you give to that concept of the demonic realm just having kind of free reign everywhere at this point? Do you think that that's maybe a little over-exaggerated, or do you believe that we might be a little closer to that darker realm than any of us want to believe?
You know what? It's so funny, Dave, because I go back and forth on it. Sometimes, my logical thinking goes, evil is a social construct. What we might, in American culture, if you go to parts of the world, they think what we do is evil, and vice versa. And so I go, all right, well, it's very much evil is gauged on what laws and traditions and what folklore is prevalent in your culture. But then I have experiences like in the Hill House, which absolutely, I don't think we've done an investigation on Portals to Hell that felt as dark and sinister as that location. And the only way I can really kind of describe it was that it felt very demonic. To answer your question, whether, we're operating in a place with a lot of, we're all operating now in the scope of dealing with dark demonic entities, like, I sometimes think we are, and, but once again, like, I'm very much, until I have straight up and down proof and I can, look it straight in the eyes, I'm always going to be a tad bit skeptical.
And Katrina, obviously, with your background in investigating, you've had some very dark locations, very dark stories that you've walked through in your life. And in those instances, how much of it do you believe is truly something that is of what people refer to as the demonic realm, as opposed to maybe spirits or entities attempting to look that way to just possibly get people out of their home, get people off of that area and out of that land?
Well, I think it's all up for debate. I think that's something that probably isn't maybe widely known about me, is that I think, jumping off of what Jack said, we don't have all the answers yet, right? So we kind of have to look at everything through multiple different lenses. And when it comes to the demonic specifically, when I talk about that in an investigation, when I'm asking those questions to a person that we're interviewing, it's so I can understand what they're perceiving, right? Because everyone has their own language. So an atheist and a Christian, if they witness the same experience, they're going to describe it very differently to me. So I think as an investigator, that's really important to understand what type of language is being used. And when Jack and I discuss it, if I say demonic to him, he automatically knows what type of activity I'm talking about. And there's definitely some, checklists. We have a little checklist of things that kind of go into that box of, is it something we would label demonic? And then you kind of start going into, because the demonic is very specific to one religion, really, although every religion has their own version of something that is negative, inhuman, and, kind of seeks to ruin souls, right? It's just they're called different names. So I think when we're looking at it collectively like that, then it becomes this thing of, we can see it across all cultures, across all walks of life, that there does seem to be this belief that there is something negative and human that seeks to ruin souls. And if that is real and tangible, then there's certainly a lot of people that believe they've experienced it. And in my work, I have certainly come across things that I would, if I were a Catholic priest, I would label it as such. I would label it demonic. So then you go back to the original question of, well, then we're getting into labels and definitions. So I think whether or not you want to label it that way or not is up to you. But, you know, in my work, I've certainly seen some activity that appears more negative and definitely appears to target certain people. And, you know, to answer the second part of that question, could it be something more benevolent, appearing to be, you know, more harmful? And I think that's also the case, you know, and I go back to, again, it's your own perceptions that you put into your experience. Somebody that believes that a scratch is negative is going to report it as such, versus somebody who believes that maybe a scratch is just some odd phenomena that we haven't figured out yet, isn't going to report it as such. So when you're investigating, you really have to dig deep into, I think, people's perceptions to try to figure out, you know, what the actual experience was.
Jack, I know recently an article came out talking about the fact that you take a little bit of your job home with you, and that you've had some activity amping up in your personal life in the last 6 months. Is that something you could tell us a little bit more about?
Yeah, I mean, I've just been having really strange experiences at my house. Really, in the last, it kind of started in August. My girlfriend kept waking up and seeing a woman stood beside my bed, and then I was just like, "Oh, you're dreaming and dreaming." And then she was having like crazy sleep apnea while she was seeing me. I mean, not apnea.
Paralysis. Okay.
Seeing, yeah, just like full on, you know, frozen, couldn't move. And then, I mean, I've had stuff like hearing stuff move around my bedroom at night, and it's just, you know, there's no dog in the room or anything. Like, the list goes on. I mean, I actually woke up having paralysis the other night, and there was a woman. I mean, if I was talking to like a police sketch artist, I could give you the exact details of what this woman looked like, and she was like stood over me. So yeah, I've been having all sorts of weird stuff.
How does it impact you as, you know, not just an investigator, but as a father, knowing that this energy seems to be drawn to you now?
Yeah, I mean, my daughter she keeps saying like, "Oh, there's ghosts, I'm seeing this, I'm seeing that, it's doing that," and I'm kind of just downplaying it. I'm like, "Oh, well, you know, you can just tell them to leave you alone and they'll listen," and you know, I'm trying to like distract her from it a bit. It's definitely concerning for sure. I'm not like, you know, when it's like, "Hey, I'm going to go do a ghost show. This is awesome. It's great. We get to travel and explore and do these amazing investigations." But I guess I never really thought, well, what happens if this stuff comes home with me? Fortunately, I know really amazing, you know, psychics and mediums that can come and like cleanse my house. So I think after this quarantine, I'm going to have to do a spiritual cleansing of this house.
Have you personally noticed that the energy or the activity amps up at specific times? If you think about it, I mean, is there, you know, has it been a day when it's been very active at home or more quiet? Is there anything about the elements of your haunting that seem to stand out? It's
always between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. whenever anything happens to me. And, you know, my daughter has seen stuff in the day. And so I think it's, you know, I don't know what to make of that, but I know me and my girlfriend, it's always been, you know, in the dead of night. And as far as day goes or lunar cycle, I haven't really been able to pinpoint that yet.
Now, a lot of people that watch the different programs will start, you know, they're drawn to it because maybe they've had elements of experiences. Is this something you would personally investigate? Would you run recorders, break out equipment to try to communicate? Or how do you feel is the best way to handle if something is starting to happen in your home for the listeners and viewers?
Sorry about that. That was my doorbell. I would absolutely. Sorry, you tell the person to leave me alone. Yeah, I absolutely would investigate the house. We've actually talked about potentially doing an episode here. So it's kind of, it was actually when we were going into quarantine lockdown, I was like, hey, let's do a LA episode. So we don't have to leave, but Katrina doesn't live in LA. So that kind of threw that
right.
off.
What about you, Katrina? Have you noticed any elements of the supernatural affecting your personal life as well?
Yeah, on and off throughout, my career. And but it's funny, very early on, I had it happen when I was working on Paranormal State. And it's funny, there's a certain, I never realized that in multiple places I lived in, I always kind of felt like there was something there until I moved into a house where I felt completely comfortable. And I noticed all these habits I had developed over the years of, sleeping with the TV on, or just kind of like scurrying into a room to turn on the light, talking to myself, singing to myself out loud, that they were all things to kind of distract me from what I guess we would label, unexplainable, supernatural maybe. And when I moved into this other house, all those habits went away, and I kind of had this realization of, I feel completely comfortable here, and there's nothing that makes me feel uneasy. I don't feel like I'm being watched. I don't feel like there's somebody in the room with me. And, not every house had those feelings all the time. They would, there were certainly some places I lived where it came and went. But this house was interesting because we had been working on a case that, again, was labeled demonic, and depending on how you want to label things, but that one was labeled demonic. And we had spoken to, it was an interesting case because we actually spoke to the woman's psychologist, who was very blunt with us about just saying, she does have real world issues that I can diagnose. He's like, but not everything makes sense. And he's like, I can't diagnose everything that she's going through, and there's something else at work here. And there were witnesses to experiences she was having. And, so when we worked on that case, not too long after, and I came home and I started having some weird things happen in that house. And I noticed very subtly all my little habits of being uncomfortable started to come back. And there was this one moment, I remember I walked down into the kitchen, it was very late at night, and I walked downstairs to get a drink. And it sounds so subjective, and you would only know it if you felt it before. But it was this overwhelming feeling that somebody was in the room with me, like staring me down. And it was to the point where I started checking the windows, I started checking the doors, started checking the locks. My roommates were asleep. I had 2 roommates at the time. And I went back upstairs, and progressively over the next couple months, I had little things happen, nothing terrible. But it escalated to the point where I was alone in my room, going to sleep, and I heard this very heavy breathing in my ear. And the best advice I had at that time, which is actually advice that trickled down from Lorraine Warren, was the best thing you can do is ignore it. So I ignored it, and sure enough, it went away. But, little things have happened on and off like that. But, I take that advice, and I just kind of ignore it, and it usually just stops.
Now, I know, Jack, you said that the Hill House felt like one of the most sinister locations you've had a chance to examine. But between the 2 seasons, if you had to pick, I don't know, let's just say the top 2 locations to you that just were off the charts with paranormal activity, what would you say would be the top 2 for yourself?
Wow. I guess for me, and with the results we got from investigations, I would say Trans-Allegheny from season 1. We had an amazing experience with a REM pod of all souls, which a lot of people think of, not that great, but it was irrefutable what happened with us. And then season 2, it would be a toss-up between Iron Island and the Hill House.
And what about you, Katrina? Which ones really have stood out to you as the most really, truly, unbelievably active?
Yeah, I mean, I'll agree with Jack. Like, Trans-Allegheny to me has a very special place in my heart, and every time I've been there, I've had something really weird happen. So Trans-Allegheny, it's funny, when I go out to events and everything, people are always like, what's the number one spot you would recommend? And it's always Trans-Allegheny for me. So if you haven't been, you need to go. And I guess the second one, gosh, man, it's like picking a favorite child. I don't know how to do that. I guess I would say the Texas Hill House for this reason. I think the experiences we had were very weird, and we had a few unexplainable experiences, but I don't believe we scratched the surface of that place at all. I think there's many, many layers there, and from the witnesses we talked to who were pretty much at odds with each other, and you'll see in the episode probably why, even though they didn't agree on certain elements of their relationship or what happened in the house, they all agreed about the activity that they experienced in their time living in the house. And taking that into account, if that's all true, then that's a pretty incredible place.
Have you, and this will be for both of you, and Katrina, we'll just have you follow up, have you ever been in any location, whether it's been filmed or not, that truly terrified you and made you even consider just walking away from investigating the paranormal at all?
For me, I don't know if it's one place specifically. To be honest, I think it's a collective experience, right? So for me, it's always been, I'll have this experience at one place, I'll have another experience at another place. And you know, I mean, you know, Tim know for sure that this stuff can take a mental toll on you as well. And I think there's been multiple times where I have decided to step back or not continue doing this work. And it's funny, there's this joke among investigators that you don't choose it, it chooses you. And there seems to be some sort of truth to that, because I think once you start, I don't really know if you can stop. It kind of gets under your skin, and it becomes this bigger quest, I think, than most people start out. And so I've had multiple times where I've wanted to step back and not do it anymore, but there's always something to draw you back in.
And how about you, Jack?
Yeah, you know, for me, I think, I don't know if there's ever been one, you know, holy crap, get me out of here, why am I doing this scenario. I think for me, it's more the fact now that, you know, I believe things have followed me home. And that definitely makes me question what I'm doing. You know, is it right? Am I, you know, should I really be leaning as far as I am into this subject? Things like that. But then again, I think, well, maybe that's what this thing is trying, you know, whatever's trying to harass me is doing this because it doesn't like that I'm poking around. And so maybe I should poke around some more.
Do you, Jack, feel that locations are more haunted, or are the people in the locations more haunted? I
think there are certainly some people who are like lightning rods to the paranormal. We did one investigation really recently, and the woman who was the kind of, you know, she was the property owner, was a complete lightning rod, and things were definitely drawn to her in a way that I don't think I had ever witnessed. And so situations like that, you go, okay, it's definitely the person, not necessarily the place. But, you know, we're all, you know, we're vessels of energy. So why couldn't, or why wouldn't things want to sometimes utilize, you know, us as people, you know, as that vessel, almost like a microphone?
And I'm curious, Katrina, why do you think that that these portals, these, I don't know if we want to call them weak spots or maybe even strong spots, in geographic locations exist? Is that just a part of natural phenomena, or is it something preternatural, supernatural that opens these portals to begin with?
I don't know. Portals for me, I think one of the things that Jack and I have talked about is Portals to Hell. The title is more a title, right? So we're not actually looking necessarily for hard evidence of portals. It's more that there are these places in the world that seem to be more active or seem to have very specific types of activity. And I think that becomes interesting in our field. Why does the asylum have so many reports of this one apparition and scratches and people being, followed once they leave there versus, the cutesy little house down the street that has a little girl ghost? What's the difference between those two? And you see the name portals come up a lot of times, in different cultures for sure, but also you tend to see it used in modern day times when people are describing places with a high amount of activity. And specifically, like if you walk into a haunted location, we'll say that doorway over there is a portal. You ask why? Well, we always have things happen there. So, then you have to kind of look into that. Is it actually, like you were saying, a weak spot in the environment where things can happen, whether those are supernatural or eventually explainable? I think there's a lot of possibilities for that, but I do think there's certain places in this world that seem to lean more towards, that there is an opening to something happening, like Skinwalker Ranch would be one I would list as that, because there's been so many different types of phenomena to come out of there that, and by very credible people, I should add, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense for our world, right? So I would describe that more on the realm of being some sort of doorway.
Very cool. The show is fantastic. I know it's one of the ones my kids and I like to sit down and watch and examine. The series returns on Thursday, April 30th at 10 p.m. Eastern and Pacific time. Check your local listings and times in your areas, folks. And please, again, as I always say with our friends and their programs, if you can't watch the show live, which is always best for ratings, make sure that if you DVR it, you watch it in the first 2 to 3 days that you've got it on your recorder so that it counts towards the overall ratings and we can keep great programming like this on the air. On your last question going out here, you've had a chance to see some really phenomenal places. Jack, if you had your choice right now of one place, any place that was completely available to you, what one place would you love to get into to really examine for the claims of the supernatural?
Oh, I would love to do Alcatraz.
Oh, that's a great choice. I had a chance almost a decade ago now to go in and investigate Alcatraz as part of a group, and it's an unsettling location. I'll tell you that. I'd love to see you guys get in there and see what you're able to find for filming. That, we were on a limited, just a group of people that were allowed to go in there, so we don't have the production capabilities. But man, that was one I wish I would have been able to film and record. What about you, Katrina? What one place still exists out there that you'd love to get into?
Honestly, since I brought it up, Skinwalker Ranch. And, Jack and I did Strawberry River Inn, which is in the same area as Skinwalker, but I would love to get onto Skinwalker Ranch proper. I think there's some weird stuff happening there.
Well, guys, congratulations on successful 2 seasons. We'll look forward to talking to you again at season 3, and thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
All right, stay tuned, folks. Tim's got some supernatural news we've been calling from around the world. Plus, your supernatural stories will be highlighted next, right here on the best in Paranormal Talk Radio. This is Darkness Radio.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
Jelly. Jelly adjective. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org, brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Always great to visit with our friends from Portals to Hell. I got a chance to actually meet and hang out with Jack Osbourne this last year when we did that Haunted Salem Live program on Halloween.
Yep.
And just a sweetheart of a guy. Funny, nice, very down-to-earth guy. Apparently he and Katrina can't afford good phones, though. But that audio quality was a little dodgy. But, I think people are taxing the phone lines so bad right now. That's probably the issue. But I'm just glad we were able to get them on. Make sure you check out their show starting up again here.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Tim, time for some supernatural news. What have we got in store for the audience today?
Well, let's jump right into, we go from one team of investigators to another. How about that?
Sounds good.
We'll go from Portals to Hell to Ghostbusters. I know the second team is more imaginary than the real life team, but they're the team that started it all, right? Ghostbusters. I'm just okay. Maybe I can't separate reality from fantasy, but that's between me and my therapist.
Scooby-Doo and the Mystery Inc. team, probably the ones that really started it all. But who am I to judge, Tim?
Well, all right, you got me there. Checkmate. I really need to stop watching so much TV. That's what happens when you're trapped inside. Just saying. Here's how Dan Aykroyd really imagined Ghostbusters, Dave. We've seen what we've seen on the screen, but how did Dan Aykroyd really see things?
I'm not sure. Are you about to tell us?
I'm about to, yeah. I won't hold back for too much longer. Dan Aykroyd, a ghost lover himself, imagined Ghostbusters a little bit differently than we saw it on the screen. Gosh, there's a cheesy tagline here. I don't even know if I should read it. It just says, who are you going to call when you want to know more about ghosts? Dan Aykroyd, of course.
Back it up. I want more smarmy, more...
You want more smarmy?
Network news guy doing this tagline. So, all right,
okay.
Ready? Reset and go.
Who are you going to call when you want to know more about ghosts? Well, Dan Aykroyd, of course.
Of course.
Yeah. Is that smarmy enough?
Sure.
Okay. Ghosts were not a new thing for Dan Aykroyd when he wrote Ghostbusters in 1984. In fact, you could call him an expert in the supernatural, just like his character is in the blockbuster Raymond Stantz. Aykroyd has been interested in ghosts since he was little, so he wanted to conceptualize a comedy based on ghost hunting. But his first script turned out completely from how we know the original movie.
Completely different, right. Yeah, it was completely different, yeah.
Yeah, they missed the word different out of this sentence. They just left it out.
Ain't nobody got time during the COVID to proofread, Tim. Ain't nobody got time for that.
I guess not. There were a lot of details that were out of this world. Literally, it says literally. There's no doubt that Ghostbusters is a classic, but years before Aykroyd wrote it, he was already deep in supernatural culture. According to Looper, I have to cough sometimes, Dave. Let me cough.
Cough? Wow. All right.
According to Looper, Aykroyd's family was in the business of ghosts. His father wrote a book called The History of Ghosts, and his family would often have seances and study the paranormal. Aykroyd himself has had many ghost sightings throughout his life and was apparently even welcomed by them when he was born, according to his mother. But between his research of ghosts and his roles on Saturday Night Live, he thought of a way to combine the two. It was around the time I had just finished Saturday Night Live, he went on to say, and I read an article on quantum physics and parapsychology in the ASPR and said, why not marry the actual scientific discipline of psychic research to an old-style comedy? Aykroyd went on to tell that to the Daily Beast. The first script for Ghostbusters held a lot of different things from the final script, however. The original name for the movie was going to be Ghost Smashers. Doesn't have that same ring, though, does it?
Not really. Not at all. No.
No. Aykroyd also said the original draft for the script held a lot more of those technical words he came across in his paranormal and scientific research. According to the Raffin.net, Aykroyd said, in parapsychology, a lot of researchers and thinkers have developed a link between quantum theory and paranormal activity. There are even several books on the subject, but parapsychologists have long been plagued by the fact that only 1 person in 10 ever reports a paranormal experience. I thought, what if you advertised on TV or in the Yellow Pages and said, hey, we believe you, we understand you? I thought it would help. That was the birth of the commercial enterprise of ghost busting. My first draft was written in a way that your basic acceleration physicist might have enjoyed more than the mass audience, Aykroyd continued. Also, my original story was more eerie in tone, and it started right off with the crew busting ghosts. The first frame was the garage door opening up at the fire hall, the ectomobile roaring out into the night, and the guys going on a bust, he said. When Ivan Reitman, the future director of the film, got Aykroyd's first script, he was very confused by it. The draft, interestingly enough, had the movie set in the future and took place on many different planets. Dan had written only 40 or 50 pages at that point, and frankly, I had no idea how I would go about making the film, Reitman said. For one thing, it was set in the future. Not far in the future, but far enough. And it took place on a number of different planets or dimensional planes, and it was all action. There was very little character work in it. The Ghostbusters were catching ghosts on the very first page and doing it on every single page after that without respite. Just one sort of supernatural phenomenon.
Do-do-do-do.
Phenomenon?
Do-do-do-do.
Phenomenon. After another. By the 10th page, I was exhausted, he went on to say. By the 40th or 50th page, however many there were, I was counting the budget in hundreds of millions of dollars, and there weren't very many laughs at that. Although I could detect a comic attitude, the whole thing was written rather seriously. In the end, I just kind of set it aside and forgot about it, Reitman said. In Dan's draft, you could not... but Aykroyd put more effort into it and eventually had Harold Ramis, who played Egon Spengler, working with him to revamp the script. In Dan's draft, you could not differentiate the characters, Ramis said. Stanton, Venkman, and Ramsey, the character we changed to Winston, were essentially all the same. That was fairly representative of Dan's writing at the time. He was very much concerned with story and structure and effects, but he would sort of stay on the surface of his characters. So one of the first things we did, together with Ivan, was work out distinctive character traits for the Ghostbusters so that each would have his own internal motivation and personal style. The last thing to be scrapped from Aykroyd's original draft was the ending, which saw ghost hunters being taken away to different dimensions. In a sense, it seemed like almost 2 different movies, Ramis continued. And while I think that most people could accept the notion of the supernatural as being one thing, interdimensional travel to them is sort of a shadow area that relates more to outer space. It just seemed too big of a leap for the audience to make. While Aykroyd's first script is bizarre and completely different from the Ghostbusters that we know and love, it's amazing to see how hard he worked on making it the success that we know today. We're just glad that Ivan Reitman took a chance on the alien ghost story and was able to convince Aykroyd that it was nonsense. We'll never look at marshmallows the same again. So there you go.
Yeah, that was that would have been a weird variation. I hear that's kind of what held up the third movie, was that Aykroyd had turned in some massive opus about going to hell and the Ghostbusters trying to fight their way out of hell, which I think had already been done in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey.
Yeah, I had heard about that script too, that they were all supposed to descend into hell or something to that effect, and that was a real early version of the script, wasn't it?
Yeah, I believe so. We're going to Yeah, and I think that was created kind of a rift between Aykroyd and Ramis, according to some of the reports, but I'm not sure. We'll have to reach out and see if Mr. Aykroyd's ready to visit with us. He was here in our first year back in 2006, and then we actually had him on the show with his father when his father's book came out, and that was about 8 years ago. It's probably a good time to get back together and connect with him.
Yeah.
So we'll have to take a look at that. All right. I've got an email here, Tim. Do you mind if we share what we call an email that's got what we call stories and such from our what we call listeners, Tim?
Sure, let's do it.
All right. I'm going to let you choose 1, 2, or 3. Choose.
2.
2. My Story by Jennifer Bergwin. Hi, Dave and Tim. My name is Jennifer, and I'm not sure if this is paranormal or something else. 4 years ago, Tim, different utilization of the word 4.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 4 years ago, I was going through chemo for colon cancer. About halfway through my treatment, I became very ill and very weak and frail due to the massive weight loss. My potassium levels were so low, my oncologist feared I may go into cardiac arrest. I was rushed to the hospital and admitted into the cancer ward. They put me on a potassium drip and fluids. As I was laying there, I swear I saw shadow people. I think I was so close to death, I was seeing the other side, but just not clearly. The crazy part is the peace I felt. I had no fear, and I felt if I died right then and there, I was okay with it, almost wishing for it to happen. I wanted to stay in that peace forever. I wonder if the shadow people were waiting or just there to let me know all will be okay. I tear up thinking about that. Some say I may have just been hallucinating, but who knows? I do believe now we never die alone, even if there are no humans around. I'm thankful it was not my time yet, but I think about that peace a lot and wish to have it now, especially with all the craziness going on in the world. Love you guys. That comes from Jennifer. Jennifer, it sounds paranormal to me. Right, it's easy to dismiss that it was nothing more than hallucinations, but I'll tell you, when I had my experience in the hospital, as featured on Haunted Hospitals. Is that what it's called, Tim? Haunted Hospitals?
Oh, yes, Dave. It's called Haunted Hospitals. It's burned in my brain.
You saw My Story in all its glory and embellishments from Hollywood, but you saw My Story, and I saw things in the hospital I still can't explain. I'd like to just say it was hallucinations, but I believe that I was surrounded by the supernatural that night. All right, Timothy.
And you saw My Story. I grew up a poor black child in Ham Lake, Minnesota.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you don't know what we're talking about, go watch, I think it's episode 3 of Haunted Hospitals. And Tim,
yes,
my longtime host and producer and co-host is in there and portrayed as a strapping young black lad.
Yeah. Well,
6'4", well put together African American gent.
Miss my shot.
Nobody got time for logic, Tim.
No. Missed my shot at a couple different things, Dave. I had a scholarship to play basketball at the U of M. I missed out on that. And I had one time I played with Prince. A lot of people don't know that. And,
wow.
We had a little falling out. So
I don't remember that part of your story, and we've been friends for 32 years.
It was in Haunted Hospitals, Dave, in the outtakes.
Oh, is that the backstory you gave to the black character portraying you?
Yeah, well, they never put it in. There wasn't enough time to put all that into the story.
You developed it yourself?
Well, no, it's in the story, Dave. I just come from a jam session. It was me, Jimmy Jam, Terry Lewis. We got together. We were working with Janet when I was on the way over from a jam session to come see you in the hospital, and they didn't put that in the show. But yeah, that was what was going on. So
I see you're not the only one that was hallucinating, Jennifer. He's awake and not in the hospital, and this is his reality. Hey, Tim, what's our next supernatural news story?
Oh, Dave, we go to TV land where Destination Fear delivers a road trip of terror. They're going into season 2 right there.
And we have them on the show tomorrow. How exciting is that? Chelsea and Dakota Layden will be with us tomorrow to talk Destination Fear. Plus, we get some really great stories out of them and strange experiences they've been having. Not having, Tim.
Not having?
Not having.
Oh.
Although having sounds like a word, more than having, but I digress. What's going on with them?
Well, happening is a word, isn't it? If you have a cookie and you cut it down the middle, that's happening the cookie.
I don't know. Now I got to look it up on Google. Thanks for that.
Well, when it comes to paranormal investigation series, most of them follow the format of a team of researchers going to a supposedly haunted location, conducting an investigation, then returning to the comfort of a nearby hotel. Oh, hotels. With Destination Fear, however, the investigation is only part of the horrifying experience, as the team also spends the night inside the terrifying locales. Season 2 of Destination Fear will once again deliver its unique explorations of famous locations, with the Travel Channel confirming that the new season is set to return Wednesday, April 29th at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. You can get more details, of course, on your old screen DVR, whatever it is you kids are using these days. I still got the dial I turn on the TV. It's an old TV.
You do not, you liar.
Yeah, I got one of them. They're black and white deals.
You're a liar. Full of lies.
Well, maybe. Per press release, they say brother and sister duo Dakota Layden and Chelsea Layden, again, like Dave said, we'll talk to them tomorrow, and their best friend Tanner Weidman, along with camera operator Alex, is it Schrader? He's not a Schrader, is he?
Nope.
Good.
I mean, we'd welcome in the Schrader family, but no, he's a Schroeder.
Okay. Confront their fears once again as they pile into their RV and hit the road on a nail-biting cross-country journey to pursue paranormal evidence, spending the night inside inside America's most haunted abandoned buildings over 6-hour-long episodes. Our last road trip was extremely intense, and it took a major toll on us mentally and physically, Dakota shared. We had to really think about how much more we could handle. Even Alex, who has been critical in capturing all of our action as our cameraman, but curiosity got the best of us, he said. Our ability to withstand fear will be tested like never before. Lured by the unknown and with a greater understanding of fear, the crew explores a whole new set of abandoned locations with grim, haunted histories and restless spirits lurking within. Only this time the destinations remain a surprise, not only just to Chelsea and Tanner, but to Dakota as well, as they each take turns picking a haunted hotspot, challenging each other in unique ways. After exploring reports of paranormal activity, they separate to sleep alone in the dark. And that's the moment when fear really takes over. This experience brings a whole new meaning to the idea of getting ghosted, Chelsea Layden revealed. No matter how frightening these places are or how terrifying the paranormal activity we encounter, we can't turn away. We're infatuated with the unknown, she went on to say. We are taking things even further this time, Tanner Weidman confirmed. Better equipped by what we learned from the first trip, we're exploring even scarier places that we didn't dare visit before. We're chasing the fear now and not letting it chase us. In the season premiere, Dakota surprises Chelsea and Tanner by taking them back to where it all began, Nopaming Sanatorium in Duluth, Minnesota, a frightening location that loomed menacingly near their childhood homes. Dakota has been itching to investigate this 118-year-old building for years, but never had the courage to set foot inside. The site of 1,500 deaths, Nopaming's history ran rampant with murder, suicide, and sinister spirits. Now the team will finally confront their childhood fears as they explore and spend the night inside one of Minnesota's most paranormally active locations. What happens to the group during their overnight is an experience they will never forget, replete with poltergeist activity and a chilling encounter with the disturbed spirit of a former maintenance man. Along their journey, the team will make stops at the Yorktown Memorial Hospital in Yorktown, Texas, Old Montana State Prison in Deer Lodge, Montana, Hillview Manor in Newcastle, Pennsylvania, Cambria County Jail in Ebensburg, Pennsylvania. Could have been a college at one time, too, College of Hard Knocks, and the Sheboygan County Insane Asylum in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, where they will be the first paranormal team to spend the night inside a building that has never before been investigated on television. You can check out, again, the season premiere of Destination Fear on Wednesday, April 29th at 10 p.m. Eastern Time on the Travel Channel.
And you can check them out tomorrow right here on the Best in Paranormal Talk Radio. Look at this. It's a star-studded back-to-back show. Katrina and Jack Osbourne today. Layden. Boy, could you ask for more, Tim?
You really can't. No.
Well, you actually could. We probably won't get it, but you could ask for more.
Well, That's being just greedy right there.
Yeah, well, it is what it is. All right, Tim, I've got an email to share here.
Okay.
Because people are a little reluctant during this time to pick up the phone and call. I understand maybe they're quarantined at home with family and afraid they'll be overheard sharing the story and it might embarrass them or make them feel like they're under scrutiny. But we still want to hear from you. Call our Voices from Beyond voicemail, 651-300-4977. That's 651-300-4977. Hi, Darkness Duo. Hi.
Hi.
So this one starts. First of all, thanks again for sharing my other two stories. I've been eager to share another pivotal para event that has inspired my interest, but this time I need to email it in. As you can tell from the bottom of the email, I work for a travel insurance company. We have been working overtime for the past 6 weeks, 6 days a week. Unless I'm getting paid to use a phone, I don't even want to look at one. Besides, you two have such great radio voices. Aw. Sweet, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
When I lived in Rhode Island, I worked in a popular restaurant that is situated at a crossroads. One of the roads is Route 44, one of the most haunted roads in the U.S. It even goes through the notorious Bridgewater Triangle. Before the restaurant was built, a woman and her daughter lived in a house on that site. Unfortunately, the daughter was struck and killed by a truck while crossing the street. Devastated, the mother never moved on and stayed on that location to haunt the restaurant after it was built. Several years before I worked there, a medium was brought in to address the events that were happening to the staff. She was only seen by the male staff members, a middle-aged woman in her 50s, in a red shirtwaist dress. Although the medium was able to determine why she was there, she was never able to get a name. But the busboys, chefs, waiters definitely knew her very well. She would whisper in their ears after close, appear to the front of the house staff once the guests all left. In fact, a busboy witnessed her sitting in a booth right after he observed the manager closing the doors. It was his first day and his last. On the other hand, the female staff members never viewed her apparition, but boy, oh boy, did they feel her presence. She liked the male staff, but the other staff, not so much. In fact, I think she tried to kill me. Dun, dun, dun! One night I was closing the downstairs pub section with another waitress, Lori. It was 1 a.m., and the last person had just left. I was wrapping up the salad unit, which had installed, had 2 glass shelves. The closest shelf was about 3 feet over the unit, and like the one about 3 feet above it, was properly placed in its shelving brackets and was flawless, not a chink, crack, or even a dimple on it. So while I was covering the chickpeas and tomatoes, I started to hear the faint sound of glass cracking. I looked around to see Lori placing the glassware on the bar. Perhaps that was the noise I was hearing. Soon afterwards, while I was placing plastic wrap over the dressings, the cracking became even more pronounced. I looked to Lori. She is using the carpet sweeper in the farthest corner of the pub. That's when I look up. Starting from the bottom left corner and proceeding towards the top right corner is a hairline crack, which has not been there just 30 minutes before. Even though I was so mesmerized that I could not move, I managed to cry out to Lori. Thankfully, she rushed to my side and was able to push me aside before the shelf descended in a million jagged shards. I could have been cut to pieces. It took us until 2 a.m. to clear the glass, throw away and replace the salad items. It took us another 30 minutes for us to process what happened over the cocktail of our choice. Vodka for her, tequila for me. Lori never had anything happen to her. She confided that several of our fellow waitresses had been tripped, pushed downstairs, and had checks or tips disappear from the table. A few weeks later, or a few weeks before this earth-shattering event, I witnessed the filter from the coffee maker drop to the floor while a pot was still brewing. There was no logical explanation for this. Soon after, I left for an internship at the Conventions and Visitors Bureau, and the shattered glass event was in my rearview mirror. Scary as this event was, it taught me an important lesson. Ghosts are people too, and there are nice people, and there are nasty people. Just because their physical aspects are no longer there, their personalities and characters still remain the same. I do not know why she targeted me or the other waitresses, but the rationale would be irrelevant anyway. On a positive note, 10 years after, while I lived in San Diego, this experience planted the seeds for my meetup about haunted restaurants. Fork, knife, and spook. Also, when people naively assure me that ghosts are harmless and are just trying to communicate with us, I wryly smile and think of that evil lady in red and start hankering for a nice, neat glass of Don Julio. Stay safe, sane, and well. That comes from Donna. Thank you, Donna. What a great, weird, little creepy story.
Absolutely.
As an organ donor, your story doesn't have to end. The good in you can live on. In fact, you could save up to 8 lives and restore sight and health for many more. Sign up right now online as an organ, eye, and tissue donor. You'll be happy you did. And just maybe, someone else will be happy too. Go to organdonor.gov. It saves lives. U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Health Resources and Services Administration.
I'm Andrew Saul, Commissioner of Social Security. Beware of telephone scammers pretending to be government employees. Real Social Security employees will never threaten you. Callers threatening you with arrest or other legal action and demanding money are not from us. If you receive a call like this, hang up, do not provide them with any form of payment or information. Report the call at oig.ssa.gov.
All right, Mr. Dennis, where does supernatural news take us next in the world?
We go to Texas, right near the Canadian border, Dave, where they've got a creepy abandoned hospital that's one of the most haunted spots there in Tejas. Exactly.
Uh-huh.
Texas is known to have some pretty spooky Wild West ghost towns, but it's also got its fair share of creepy spots built within the last decade. One of the most haunted spots in Texas includes this terrifying abandoned hospital outside of San Antonio. Yorktown Memorial Hospital is not a place to visit if you're spooked easily, and you're about to find out why. The Yorktown Memorial Hospital was founded in 1950 in Yorktown, Texas, by a Roman Catholic church group called the Felician Sisters. Or Felician Sisters. I'm sorry, the Felician Sisters. I don't know why
I like that accent. It's quite delightful.
Do you? The Felician Sisters, even. The hospital was built to provide helpful... That's the scariest thing about this whole story right there. The hospital was built to provide helpful services for those dealing with drug and alcohol abuse in the area. The center ran for about 30 years, but was eventually closed down in 1980. The hospital was then fully abandoned and still stands vacant, full of old rusting medical equipment. Obviously, an abandoned hospital with reports of many deaths over its course of being open is going to be a hotspot for ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts. The trashed long hallways and rooms look almost as if the ghosts of the patients who passed away destroyed the hospital and are still haunting the area. There have been reports of many horrifying sights from visitors, including dark individuals that look like hospital patients walking around when the lights are off. Visitors have also reported seeing what appeared to be talking dolls and giant, dark, unexplainable masses with bright red eyes. There are countless claims of paranormal activity from those who visit the haunted spot, all just as scary as the last. It asks here, are you brave enough to stop by and find some ghosts for yourself? Only with proper permission, I would answer that with. There is a person with the role of checking up on the abandoned hospital, and they have reported seeing many spooky sights. Texas is full of haunted spots, but this one just might take the cake on being the spookiest one ever. It also says in the article, enter the hospital if you dare, but you've been warned of the horrors that may lie within, like hospital gurneys and wheelchairs and stuff like that, Dave.
I see.
Yeah.
Very
Boo, kids.
Well, Tim, a few weeks ago, we were talking about concerts, our favorite and least favorite concerts.
Yeah. Yep.
And I had a bunch of those emails I forgot to get to. Let's just mention a couple. Just listening to the episode where you asked about our most favorite and least favorite concerts. My most favorite was Alice Cooper at the Medina Ballroom in Minnesota. I got pushed to the front of the stage when Alice was singing Poison. I blew him a kiss, and he shook his finger at me. Nothing tops being noticed by Alice. My least favorite was Air Supply at the State Fair. One of the guys fell off the stage and broke his arm. The audience turned ugly and started demanding their money back. I was actually scared. Well, you're every woman in the world to me. I don't remember Air Supply falling off the stage at the State Fair. Do you remember that? You would have thought that had made big news here in Minnesota. We're a very cordial, congenial group.
Especially if we would have damaged Air Supply. That would have been some funny news. I don't remember it per se, but
I'm not calling Katie a liar, Fibber. I'm just not sure I remember that story. Yeah,
but it was Air Supply. I mean, so I don't know.
What a varied musical taste. Going to see Alice Cooper and then Air Supply.
Well, I suppose, it's like when Elvis was doing uppers and downers, you got to have something to get you up and something to put you down. So.
Hey, Dave and Tim, in 2015, my son who lives in Pittsburgh got us tickets to see the Rolling Stones Zip Code Tour. It was at Heinz Stadium. Completely amazing.
Yeah.
I could not believe the energy and acrobatics displayed by all the band, but especially by Keith Richards. The Stones are one of those rare bands where their tour albums are almost better than their studio work. They are truly a band that feeds off the crowd energy. Worst concert? The Oak Ridge Boys. Giddy up, boom, bop, boom, bop, mow, mow. How, Tim? That's my question. Giddy up, boom, bop, boom, bop. How could they be the worst? But it wasn't their fault, Bob says. The music was loud, but you couldn't understand a single word.
Oh, that's why.
I have some sound engineering training and experience, and I believe it was because of the room, tiny stage, low ceiling, and too much sound deadening.
Yeah.
I've made it a point to avoid that venue from then on. That comes from Bob in Tucson, Tim, not Tuscan. My mouth read quicker than my eyes and logic could tell me.
That happens to me a lot.
There's a place here in Minnesota, one of the casinos, where it is another one of those kind of low ceiling, smaller rooms. It can be great to see a concert. We went and saw the Stray Cats there. Amazing show. But I know my wife went and saw the Jackson 5 there, or the Jacksons.
Are you talking Treasure Island?
I didn't want to be specific, Tim, but yes.
Sorry.
If they don't have the right sound people in there, it can really botch it. I mean, Stray Cats, amazing concert, sounded great. Billy Idol, fantastic. The Jacksons, the audio was so muddied. Mm-hmm. And when I talked to them, I'm like, geez, this is kind of a waste of money. You couldn't understand it. It was like, that's how much you could hear of their actual vocalizations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I complained, thinking maybe Treasure Island will kick me a little night stay or an extra ticket to another show. They said, yeah, we know. We've been trying to tell their sound people that all along. So I don't know if they were just trying to bury the Jacksons' voices. Speaking of, the We'll Bury It, that's where the Traveling Wilburys came up with their name. Did you know that?
Oh, yeah, yep.
Yeah, that when they were recording the album, when there was flaws, George Harrison just said, don't worry, we'll bury it in post.
Yep.
So it became the Traveling We'll Bury It. So I like that. All right. Tim, what is our next story?
Oh, I was going to say we don't have any more of those concert emails.
Let me take a quick gander. I'm just looking to see if I've got any more in here.
Fascinated.
Concerts. My favorite concert, here you go, was the Mike and Mickey show, March of 2019. Because it's a freaking monkey show. That's what she says. It was also a belated birthday present for me, so made it even better. I was almost nosebleed seats, but I didn't care. I was in the same room with Mike Nesmith. During high school in the late 90s, Nick at Night had Monkey Mondays. I know I'm a couple decades late of liking them. I've been hooked since then. I researched these guys, and I was cramming for a test. I was researching them like I was cramming for a test. The worst concert experience I ever had was in the 90s at the KQRS Country Concert Tour. KQRS do country concerts?
I don't seem to remember that, but I guess I did.
Travis Tritt, Joe DiMessina, and Charlie Daniels were performing, but the reason my family went was because Hank Williams Jr. was also performing. I have seen Charlie Daniels and I have seen Hank Williams Jr. Both were great concerts, Tim. I just want to go on record as saying the concert was awesome, but the reason why it was the worst experience was that the fact that my family almost got into a fight with some rowdy people.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you can't blame the concert experience on that. There was a gal and two guys behind us who moved to seats behind us when a trio left. The gal behind us was dancing around, and her shirt in the back pocket kept hitting my dad and brother in the face. My dad asked her numerous times to stop, but it kept hitting them. Now, my dad is not someone who takes shit from people. So I was surprised he let it happen numerous times before he did something. He finally got tired of it, so he grabbed the shirt out of her pocket and threw it at her. This chick got pissed off and started screaming in my dad's face, consuming him with the smell of alcohol and pot emanating from every pore. Finally, my mom offered to have security take care of this. After that was said, the two guys with this broad got nervous and tried to calm their friend down because they were in closer seats than what they paid for, and they probably had a few joints still on them. Eventually, they got her to chill out, and the concert ended with no more problems. I love you guys, and I'm a huge fan of the Holzer Files. I can't wait for season 2. You guys stay safe during this crazy time. Always a fan, Julia. Thank you, Julia.
You know, Hank Jr., when he was really, really in the throes of addiction, he was either very hit or very miss. Yep. But the one time, I used to cover, when I was in country radio, I used to cover Country Fest over in Cadott, Wisconsin. There was one year he was headlining there, and it was interesting to be able to stand backstage and see him come in, do his thing, and leave, because he literally did not come in until it was time for his show. And he came in a limousine that was escorted by police, sirens blaring and everything, and they had to have the stage set up a certain way. So there were 4 stools that were put on stage, okay? And on these 4 stools were fried chicken and Jack Daniels.
Okay, what's the weird part of the story?
Here's what's weird, okay? And this is why it had to be put in an exact way, because you sit and you talk to the promoters, and they were sweating it because it had to be the exact way. Otherwise, if it wasn't, he would turn around, go back in his limo, and drive off. Okay? So the band is up on the stage, and they start playing. Now, keep in mind, he's not quite there yet. The limo is just pulling up, but the band is already playing. Okay? So he gets up there. He steps up off the limo, goes up the stairs, takes one look around to make sure the stools are the way they're supposed to be, because one metal vat of chicken is on one stool, and directly across from it is supposed to be a bottle of Jack Daniels, and then directly in back of that is the other vat of chicken, and then directly across from it is the Jack Daniels. So they have to alternate, and they have to. So you know what I'm saying? It has to be in a square. So no article is directly, across from each other, but they're kind of kitty corner pattern. So he can, as he walks in, he can grab the Jack and a fistful of chicken, and then 15 feet later, grab another piece of chicken and another bottle of Jack.
God love it, man. When you get to that point, I want to be that famous where I could just have buckets of chicken and rum and Jameson just sitting around. So I snap my fingers and it's ready to go.
And literally, that's what he did. He walked up, he grabbed the Jack, and it's already uncorked for him, so he doesn't have to even take the top off. He grabs the open bottle of Jack, he takes a swig, he takes a bite off the chicken, throws his chicken breast to the side, and he walks up and he just starts singing. And then when he was done, he walked off the stage, he grabbed the metal container of chicken, the other bottle of Jack, and he was gone. And this was before the show was even over. Like, the band is still playing, and he was like, "Good night, y'all." And he takes this metal vat of chicken and the bottle of Jack, gets in the limo, and goes. Like he was never there.
That's pretty cool. That's some big ballin' style right there.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Monkees, I will say the Monkees were pretty remarkable to see as well. When they did their 20th anniversary concert, I got to see that. I was at the Greek Theater when Mike Nesmith appeared on stage for that little encore they did. I got a chance to see Mike Nesmith perform at the Cubby Bear in Chicago. I got to see every show I saw was great. We got to see their last concert here at the Minnesota State Zoo when Davy Jones was still alive. And we were right by the stage, and my kids loved it. And And, it was cute because Davy Jones goes, talking about how, they'll never be part of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But, and he goes, but people don't realize how influential we are. And then they show a scene of Davy Jones doing his little sidestep dance, and then they show a scene of Axl Rose doing the same little dance. He goes, Axl Rose stole my dance, and now this kid stole my hairdo. And they show a picture of Davy Young with his hairdo, and then they show a picture of Justin Bieber, same hairdo. So it was a fun little clever show and a great time. So Monkees were a good show too. But I loved the Hank Jr. shows I saw. He was great.
Yeah.
I have such a diverse interest in music, so
well, I tell
I'm
you
all about it.
And I'm sure you'll agree with me. Hank Jr. was like watching dynamite go off. I mean, he'd get up there and he was this force, just this absolute force. And from the beginning of a set to the end, the man didn't stop. I mean, he was just energy. Whether you liked his music or not, he completely got your attention. And then when he left, you were exhausted.
Well, I remember one of the concerts we saw in Indiana, I believe it was. He goes, he's singing, and all of a sudden all the band leaves, and it's just him on stage with his guitar. And like half the audience gets up to go to the bathroom. And he goes, he kind of waits, and as soon as they all kind of leave, he goes, well, fuck them. And he goes, they don't even know what I was about to do. And then he goes into this amazing version of House of the Rising Sun acoustic. Mm-hmm. Unbelievable. Probably one of the best songs of the entire night.
Yeah.
And then he did, I wish I could remember the other acoustic song. He did another like just ass-kicking country rock song that was just great by himself without the band, just astounding. Mm-hmm. And then he goes, see what those sons of bitches missed? And then everybody starts coming back in, and then all of a sudden his whole band comes out on stage and he just breaks into this big cheesy grin. It was just such a great little funny moment. Mm-hmm. All right, so that's it. I think that's all the little emails I had on favorite concerts. Where are we off to next in the supernatural news category?
We're going to Camp Atterbury, Dave, where the story of a little girl haunting Camp Atterbury and its dormitories comes up. When Melinda Zell began her association with the Atterbury Job Corps in February 2005, she had no idea that her studies would also include that of the spiritual realm. The Job Corps is located on land once occupied by the Wakeman General Hospital complex. Back in the day, the hospital left its own imprint upon the grounds of Camp Atterbury. The 47 buildings comprising the hospital were the largest of its kind in the United States in during the 1940s, containing over 9,000 beds. During its tour of duty, the facility treated more than 85,000 patients and was one of several of the Army's plastic surgery centers in the country. The hospital steadfastly became a silent witness to the results of war and to the individuals passing in and out of its doors. Let's speculate on the doctors and nurses who daily traversed the hallways of these buildings. Their job was to provide comfort and healing for many far beyond that happening. And of those who occupied a bed and found themselves in a position far beyond their control or understanding, their daily life became a series of visits from these white-clad staff charged with easing pain and addressing injuries, both physical and psychological. We should also speculate on the pain and personal turmoil these buildings absorbed during this period of time. This brewed daily, replaced by a consistent cycle of new arrivals, and it can be compared to a giant sponge soaking everything in, then gradually releasing. Many patients left on their own accord, however, there were those who checked in but never checked out. In the paranormal field, hospitals seem to be the greatest recipient of life and death drama, fueling ghostly activity. For however many months a Job Corps student is on the ground, these grounds essentially became their world, and the campus became their playground. A few have claimed that life at the center is like living in jail. Others, getting 3 meals a day and a place to sleep, have no complaints. The ramifications of the real world outside the perimeter fence has gradually filtered into the sheltered and controlled academic environment. Drugs, alcohol, fights, sex, and the stabbing of a female student in 2008. Even a heavily secured campus promoting personal advancement and achievement is not immune to outside influences. Yet it would appear that things are happening just below the surface and not a part of Job Corps' curriculum. Many buildings on the campus are indeed newer, built where former buildings used to stand. However, a far share of existing buildings has been repurposed. Renovations aside, many in the paranormal community feel that all of these locations have potential for becoming harbingers for those who have remained behind. Zell had her own dormitory encounter as a student in 2005. The quote is, "I remember being in the bathroom at 1 a.m. I heard someone come in and the stall door next to mine opened and closed. I bent my head to look under the stall and saw no feet. I said, 'Hello?' There was no answer. 'Guys, this isn't funny.' I hurried up, finished, and searched the entire bathroom, and nothing. My heart started pounding, and then I heard a little girl's laughter in the hall and a ball being bounced. I ran to my room, and I thought I was crazy until someone else told me that they had heard the exact same thing." Is that the only paranormal story coming out of the Job Corps Center? Zell replied with a smile, "That's just the beginning."
Ooh, nice little tease on that.
Yeah, I guess, huh?
All right, where are we off to next?
Last story I have has to do with Tom DeLonge. That
all right,
infamous name of Tom DeLonge. He saw a UFO off the California coast, and supposedly he recorded the whole thing. Quarantine hasn't stopped Tom DeLonge from rushing down to the beach on Tuesday night, which would have been March 31st, after a friend spotted a UAP, an unidentified aerial phenomena. I said that word. Phenomena. Off the coast near the Angels and Airwaves frontman's house. After studying it from the balcony, DeLonge and his girlfriend Marie hopped in the car and headed down to the abandoned beach. I said beach, where they gazed at the sky for hours. DeLonge was able to catch some footage of the bright light in the dark sky and shared it with his Instagram followers, along with a detailed description of what he saw. This was his quote. He said, "So last night I got a text from somebody that there was a UAP right off of the beach where I live. I ran to my balcony and saw it split into two pieces and raise vertically. I grabbed Marie, jumped in my truck, and went straight down to the beach. We were the only ones on the beach last night as this light disappeared. It reappeared, broke into three pieces, and stacked vertically with one little red dot flying around the top, and then disappeared for the rest of the evening. This video doesn't show much, but we were up quite late watching the light dance about half a mile to a mile off of the beach," he continued. "It was huge. It was fiery orange. Of course, I called up Lou Elizondo as I was there, and he was telling me all of these things I was supposed to do with location, geographic details, weather, altitude, and distance, etc. Of course, I was completely worthless when it came to those details, but yes, big deal last night in Encinitas, California. Lou checked immediately. There were no flights in the area except one that I had my eyes on the entire time. No military, no boats, and a bunch of hovering flights that were stacking on top of each other. Wild. Who knows? UFO footage isn't the only entertaining content DeLonge has shared on social media recently. Before trying to prove that aliens exist, he tried to prove that he was the Joe Exotic of Blink-182, which sparked some hilarious banter with his former bandmate, Mark Hoppus. So, there you go.
Very cool. Well, that's it for this week, kids. We hope you had as much fun as we did. Remember, we'll be back again tomorrow with Dakota and Chelsea Layden as they take us into the destination Fear. We got some great stories from them. I hope you'll tune in and check it out right here on the best in Paranormal Talk Radio. I'm Dave. That's Tim. This is Darkness Radio.